So let's take a look at the escape character in PowerShell. So in PowerShell, the escape character is the backtick character, and that's going to be just to the left of the number 1 on the standard US keyboard. And the escape character in PowerShell is used for, spoiler alert, escaping characters, specifically in strings, but it does have some other common usages that I want to walk you through as well. So for instance, in a string, say that you need to type out the $sign followed by some characters. So typically the $sign followed by some characters represents a variable in PowerShell. So in this case, if we run line 16, since this variable is inside of double quotes, PowerShell will attempt to expand that variable. And you can see that we don't actually have $10. Well, maybe we wanted to say that we did have $10. So there's a couple of ways to do that. With the escape character, we can put that in front of the $sign here on line 17. And there you can see that it outputs $10. Or if we wanted to use single quotes, a variable inside of single quotes is not expanded. So we run line 18 and we see the same result. And keep in mind that not all characters in a string can be used for a variable name. So for instance, the space on line 21, you notice that outputs the $sign. Line 22 a dash, same thing, it's going to output the $sign and the dash. And if you're not sure, adding a backtick isn't bad. So you can see here inside of double quotes, the backtick is not output, but inside of single quotes, it is, however. So just be careful about that. So another common example are the quotes characters, so single and double quotes. So let's say here on line 28, I have the this should, I'm using my air quotes here, work. That's what we want to output. So on 29, you can see that I've got this red squiggly line. Well, that's because I'm in VS Code, and it knows that that's not going to work. And indeed, if I try to run it, it's not a good line. So at line 30, we can use the backtick as an escape to escape those double quotes so that they're represented inside of that string. And there you can see the output down below. But we can also wrap that inside of single quotes, and then the double quotes inside of single quotes will be output. So we get the same output as before, or the opposite is true. So if we wanted to use single quotes instead of double quotes, line 32, we can output the single quotes that way without having to escape them. So another common usage, at least that I run into, is if I wanted to join variables inside of double quotes. So because remember, double quotes expands variables. So let's say, for instance, I have a function that comes up with a file name, comes up with the today's date, which is day or month-day, at least in the US it is. And then I want to add a .txt on the end of it, give it an extension. So I've got my 3 variables, name, date, and extension. I'm going to load those into my session. And here on line 40, this looks like it should work. I have name underscore date and then extension. But you notice I just get the month-day, which isn't quite what I wanted. Well, in this case, this kind of goes back to the first example where the underscore is actually a character that can be used in a variable name. So line 42, I've got to actually escape that underscore. And there we go, we get the file name that we expect. So another common usage of the backtick is for a couple of special characters. Now Microsoft has a list of them. I've got a link here. I'll make sure it's in the description. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want to touch on the 2 common examples that I use. Here on line 48, and this is inside of double quotes, I've got a backtick and backtick end. So each of those represents a new line. So if I run line 48, you should see down below that I have the first part of the string followed by 2 extra lines and then this second part of the string. Cool. And then with the backtick T, this represents a tab, but only inside of double quotes. Keep that in mind. Now, it won't work inside of single quotes. So with 2 backtick T's, I end up with 2 tabs. And there are some other examples like I mentioned, but I don't use them very often, but you might, so be sure to check out the link. And then another usage of the backtick is for line continuation. And I wanted just to mention this as an example because this is not best practice. So line 56, as an example, you can see I'm creating a new item, and then I'm piping it to remove item there on the end of it. And it's too long for a single line. So you can see here that remove item trails off. And just to verify that this works, I've run it, don't get any errors. It creates that new item, and then it removes that new item. Pretty simple. So here on line 58, if I add the backtick to about halfway through, and then immediately on the next line continue the rest of the command, PowerShell will actually in the background join these together, run them as one line. So I run that, get the same output, etc. But the reason this is not best practice is that there's no standard way to do this. It can get really messy, it gets really ugly, and so that's why you should seriously consider splatting instead of doing the line continuation with the backtick. I'm not going to explain that here today because we have another snip on it that you should definitely check out. But this is the same examples before, but with that splat instead. It looks a lot nicer, it's easier to read, and it still meets the line width restrictions. So that's how you can use the escape character in PowerShell. Thanks for watching.